Another time he was eating, Bihari Lal would put a big plate in front of him and bring him some prasad. He would be eating the prasad. And not far away, there was a dog that had babies. Some people say there were 5 little baby dogs, puppies. And these puppies would see plate of prasad as he'd eating. And they'd run up and start eating off the plate with him as he was eating. So after seeing this, the next day, Bihari Lal chased the dogs away. Jagannath Das Babaji was about to start his prasad. He asked his servant, "Where are the dogs?" He said, "I am fasting until I have the association of these dogs." So he would not touch anything. Wouldn't eat. And then Bihari Lal brought the dogs back. They were just gathered around in a circle around the plate, and Jagannath Das Babaji was eating very blissfully. And he called out, "These are not ordinary dogs. These are dogs of the holy Dham. All glories to the dogs of the holy Dham of Navadvip." On another occasion, Bihari Lal was carrying him on a basket on his shoulder, and a wealthy man came and gave a donation of many rupees. He handed them to Bihari Lal. Bihari Lal handed them up to Jagannath Das Babaji in the basket. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj said, "Go back to that wealthy man." They went back. Jagannath Das Babaji said, "Take this money back." He said, "You gave me only a few rupees, and I feel the weight of it is so heavy. How will my servant survive? And how can I stay on the basket holding this money? It has so much weight. I can imagine you have so many rupees. How much of a weight is on your life?" Hare Krishna. At other times, he would accept donations. One time, someone offered 200 rupees. Now, this is about 150 years ago. How much do you think 200 rupees is worth today? Anyone like to guess? Sachinandan, Sachara. Crores. Anyways, Jagannath Das Babaji took the 200 rupees, gave it to Bihari Lal, and said, "Buy 200 rupees worth of rasgullas." Now, according to Satchidananda Prabhu, I don't know. He says that's crores of rupees of rasgullas. Maybe I cannot question because I'm not a rupee person. But he took all that large amount of money and bought rasgullas, and Jagannath Das Babaji said, "Feed them to the cows of Navadvip, but don't give a single one to those bogus Babajis." The cows of the holy Dham. And his humility. He was going back and forth. When he was about 146 years old, he was living in Surya Kund in Vrindavan, Braj Bhumi, and he was going to go back to Navadvip. So the Brijabasis and the great Babajis who were there were many great Paramhamsas living there. They were saying, why are you so old? Why are you leaving Vrindavan? How could you leave Vrindavan? You're so old and you're very, very old now. Why not stay here? You're in the holiest of all holy places. You're in Surya Kund, just close to Radha Kund and Sri Braj Bhumi. Jagannath Das Babaji, from the heart of his hearts, he said, because I am a very fallen soul. Vrindavan is the place for the highest Paramhamsas. It is the most intimate part of Krishna's Leela. And any offenses that are committed in Vrindavan are very serious. But I am very fallen. Let me live and give up my life in Navadvip, because that is the place of my beloved Lords Gauranga and Nityananda. They forgive all offenses. They give love of Krishna. They give true realization of Vrindavan even to the most fallen souls like me. So he let me return to Navadvip. That was his humility. He was guru of so many great, great souls. He was a disciple of Madhusudan Das Babaji, who was just 2 or 3 lines after Baladev Vidyabhushan. So many great souls he initiated. Great souls like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was writing prolific literatures, who was spreading the glories of the holy name like no one else in centuries. They were his disciples. And yet he was considering himself the most fallen soul, not worthy to live in Vrindavan, but felt his only hope was to be in the dust of Navadvip, calling out for the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu and Lord Chaitanya. That was his last day in Vrindavan. And of course we know the story. He was so exalted by all the sages and Vaishnavas that when Bhaktivinoda Thakur had that vision of where the true birthplace of Lord Chaitanya was, now this was strongly controversial even to this day. Because in the Kuliagram side of Navadvip, which is now the town of Navadvip, there has been for hundreds of years a place that has been worshipped as the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from his examination of scriptures and ancient maps and discussing with very, very elevated divine Paramhamsas, he realized it cannot be the place. Vaishnavas just found that place and created it because they would get pilgrims, they would get money, and so many other things. And or perhaps maybe just so that there would be some focus on Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. But he found the real place was on the other side of the Ganga. He had a vision of light emanating from that place. And he went there and saw all tulsi plants growing. Although it was the property of Muslims, it was just a field. Still, in that place there was only tulsi. Nothing else would grow but tulsi. And from ancient maps, from ancient scriptures, he was convinced this is the place. But his final confirmation had to come from the realization of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. He was very old. Bihari Lal brought him the basket. Bhaktivinoda Thakur set him down. Jagannath Das Babaji leaped out of his basket, dancing ecstatically, crying out the holy names of Sachinandan, Gaur-Hari. Then Bhaktivinoda understood, yes, this is the place. Jagannath Das Babaji said, with all certainty, this is the appearance place of our beloved Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Today is also the disappearance day of His Holiness Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. It's already 11 o'clock, and Srimad Bhagavatam is way beyond its boundaries. Should I speak a few words about Tamal Krishna? What can I say about this very loving, kind God brother who personally showered me with such immense affection, kindness, encouragement. I believe in 1968, he first came to Srila Prabhupada, along with his best friend, who was later to be called Vishnu Jana Swami Maharaj. They came to San Francisco, and obviously a great saint from a previous life, he just immediately committed himself 100% to Srila Prabhupada and to Srila Prabhupada's mission. Now in these days there was not much of an institution of ISKCON. There was a little storefront on the 22nd Avenue in New York, and there was a little storefront in San Francisco. In San Francisco in those days, I don't know if anybody wore dhotis or shaved their heads. It was very simple. But he joined there. And just by meeting Srila Prabhupada, hearing the philosophy, chanting the holy names, tasting prasad, committed his life. And practically from the first day, although he was very, very surrendered to serve as the servant of the servant of the servant, Prabhupada saw in him a leader. He was willing to commit himself. He was willing to take any type of risk to serve his Gurudev. Srila Prabhupada would often say, nothing great can be done without taking risk. If you're not willing to take risk, you will remain mediocre at the best. Prabhupada took such immense risks. Getting on the Jaladuta with 7 rupees. Or 40 rupees. 40 rupees. Without knowing if anyone would even be there to receive him. At the age of 70. That was a risk. To stay in New York City, despite everybody telling him to go home, with no success, was a risk. When they gave him that little storefront, Mukunda Maharaj, Janaki, Prabhu, Mataji, and they told him, we can help you with the first month's rent, but we don't think we'll be able to help you beyond that. He didn't know anybody. And yet he signed the contract, took the storefront in Manhattan, That was a risk. Went to San Francisco, to London. Signed for the land in Bombay when he didn't even have any money. He just had a few. He signed the contract giving a tiny bit. He had to pay the rest by a certain date. He had no access, no means. He took risks. Hare Krishna. Well, there's early devotees, including Tamal Krishna Goswami. They just had such faith. And although Prabhupada's disciples were rapidly growing, more centers, more places, more and more people were joining, Srila Prabhupada had such trust in the commitment, the devotion, and the abilities of Tamal Krishna Goswami. Quite amazing. Devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan. That was all ISKCON was in those early days. There was nothing else. There were no books to distribute, no magazines to distribute. Temples were little storefronts. They would just go out all day, practically every day, and just do Nam Sankirtan. You've heard about those days? Srila Prabhupada ordered Tamal Krishna Goswami to organize first-class Sankirtan parties. First time. Most important service of all of ISKCON. He put him in charge. And where people were just, devotees were just going out, all scattered out, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He actually organized them, had them dressed in a proper way, and had them playing the right rhythms and singing the right melodies and going to the right places. He actually organized and systematized Nam Sankirtan. And not only that, he propagated it, he inspired them, he encouraged them with such faith to go out every day, all day, and do Nam Sankirtan. And it was so incredibly successful that Srila Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Goswami to go to all the other centers in ISKCON and organize Nam Sankirtan the same way. And he went to Los Angeles, later went to London, New York. Here's New York, all these, like the senior people, and he's coming to teach them how to do Nam Sankirtan and Prabhupada's instruction. Amazing. And then there was Back to Godheads. Devotees were doing Nam Sankirtan and distributing Back to Godheads. Well, he just took it so seriously, this distribution of Back to Godhead. He was organizing, Back to Godhead distribution. At that time, when it first came out, and even a couple years later, the distribution was practically nothing. Tamal Krishna Goswami was determined that he would organize thousands of Back to Godheads to be distributed. He told Prabhupada, this is what I want to do for you. And he did it. He was distributing more Back to Godheads than the whole rest of the movement put together under his inspiration. So Srila Prabhupada told him to go from center to center to inspire people and to train people how to distribute Back to Godhead. And then sometime later, Prabhupada started just printing his books. And Srila Prabhupada had that faith and that trust in the determination, the commitment, and the enthusiasm of Tamal Krishna. At that time he was Grihasta, I believe. And he just systemized, organized, and inspired book distribution. Very much. Various parts of the world. Spearheaded. Prabhupada called him to London. Called him to various centers in America. Nam Sankirtan, back to Godhead, book distribution. Helped him organize the temples. Develop standards of cleanliness for the temples. Deity worship. He was really like Prabhupada's right-hand man in so many ways. And then when Prabhupada came to India, that was the most difficult project. He called for some of his disciples to come. At the end of 1970, they arrived. They were having nice programs. Devotees were amazingly received by the people of India. But as far as organizing a movement here, anything the devotees tried to do, they were getting cheated. As far as any land, any money dealings, always getting cheated. And devotees were always getting sick. It was very, very difficult. And there was nothing. Srila Prabhupada called Tamal Krishna Goswami because he had such faith and trust in his commitment and his abilities. And his allegiance to do things Prabhupada had great trust in Tamal Krishna Goswami's to do things exactly according to the Parampara way. And he put Tamal Krishna Maharaj in probably the most difficult service in ISKCON at that time, to be the GBC for all of India, when there was nothing here. Hare Krishna. And for several years he did it. Prabhupada really was very much in touch with him. Prabhupada more or less was like the GBC. But Tamal Krishna Goswami was his right hand. And there's that famous story where Tamal Krishna Goswami wanted to take sannyas. And there was a big controversy over him taking sannyas. And he was so determined. So determined. He just wanted to give his life, everything. No distractions from Prabhupada's service. Prabhupada gave him sannyas. And he saw how Prabhupada loved book distribution. Loved book distribution. So he wanted to go to the West to expand book distribution. Prabhupada blessed him. He went to America, joined up again with his old friend Vishnujana Swami Maharaj, who was then traveling around mostly doing dramas and mantra rock shows and Nam Sankirtan. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, from one little bus, he organized an army of book distributors. They were making, just through their preaching and book distribution, they were bringing dozens and dozens and dozens of new people right out of the secular world and training them all to be book distributors. Soon there was probably about 100 book distributors, 4 major buses, about 25 vans, just crisscrossing the whole of America, and broke all records for book distribution. It's amazing. Srila Prabhupada called him for so many projects. Yesterday I was in Calcutta. Prabhupada was struggling to get some land in Mayapur. Very difficult. There were forces both from within and without that were determined to block Prabhupada from getting any land in Mayapur. And he sent many people, but nobody could succeed. Then from Calcutta, he sent Tamal Krishna Goswami. with the money. No checks or credit cards. Cash, rupees. Now, in those days, not an easy thing. Mayapur was not what it is today. It was a land of dacoits and a land of all kinds of other things. There were some Gaudiya mats there, which were very beautiful and wonderful, but still, it was a very dangerous. And to travel there and back by bus. So Prabhupada took a piece of cloth, like a kopan, and wrapped it around Tamal Krishna Goswami's waist, and then rolled up all the money and put it in that, different parts of it. So it was like all around his waist, all this rupees, to buy land. Prabhupada personally showed him how to tie it and keep it secure so nobody could see it. So he went and he spent days and days, and finally, he convinced the people to sell him the land. And all those rupees, they were mostly in small notes, because Prabhupada didn't have big notes. He had to write down the serial number of every note in order for the transaction to be acceptable. He did it. He got the deed. It's impossible. And in the middle of the night, he came back to Calcutta, and he saw Prabhupada's light was still on. He was translating his books. And usually no one disturbed Prabhupada when he was translating his books. But Tamal Krishna Goswami knew how this would make Prabhupada happy. And he came into the room, offered his prostrated obeisances. On his knees, he said, Srila Prabhupada, the land in Mayapur is yours. And then handed Srila Prabhupada the deed of ownership. I don't remember the exact words, but I think Prabhupada said, I was waiting for you. Prabhupada was so very, very pleased. Very, very pleased. And longer than anyone else, he served as Prabhupada's personal secretary. And during Prabhupada's last year in this world, he especially had Tamal Krishna Goswami, his personal secretary, organizing everything around him until his departure. On a personal level, there are so many memories that spring from my heart. I remember in 1994, sometime around that, Radha Gopinath Temple had just come back. And there was a North American GBC meeting in Dallas, which was Tamal Krishna Goswami's headquarters in America. There were dozens of sannyasis, probably a dozen GBCs, all temple presidents from every part of America, all the senior devotees, many from all over the world were there for this conference. He arranged everyone, their rooms, their accommodation, and we would just discuss Krishna and Prabhupada and so many things. Sometimes for hours and hours he would just share his heart and allow me to share my heart. It was very special, very sweet. And one night we did Nam Sankirtan. Forgive me for telling this story, but it's just shows the sweetness of his affection. We did Nam Sankirtan with all the leaders of ISKCON in the streets of Dallas, and he took me right up front with him to dance in the front. And the next morning there was a newspaper article, and there was a photograph of the kirtan, and I was right in front, and he called me into his room, and he was smiling ecstatically, and he showed me the photo, and he said, look at the person in front. He looks just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Always trying to encourage his God brothers. And when he procured this land at Govardhan, he would call me in Bombay. So are you busy now? I said, I'm very busy. I have this problem, and I have this program and that program and so many other programs arranged. Because in those days, most of you were not around in those days. But in those days, usually we gave class every morning, and we had a late night program 7 days a week. Do you remember Govinda Prabhu? Mahaprabhu, you remember? Every night of the week we'd have programs. And no program in Bombay is not late. Because nobody comes till late. And nobody lets you leave till later. So we had scheduled like months before, every night, this place, 7 days a week, programs all day, going to different people's houses during the day. So everything was, and he said, are you busy? I said, I'm very busy. He said, well, I want you to come to Govardhan. I want to discuss something with you. As he was building that Bhaktivedanta ashram. I said, Maharaj, when should I come? He said, today. I said, but I have so many other programs. He said, no, you have no other programs. You come today. I said, I want you to come today. I need you to come today. Come today. I said, I'm coming. So I came on that day, and we did Govardhan Parikrama together, and then at night, sitting very, very high up in the roof till late at night, we were just discussing the glories of Govardhan together. It's very sweet. And one year in Janmashtami, we both went to Hungary, New Brajadam. And every morning, every evening, there were so many devotees from all directions who come to Hungary for Janmashtami. New Brajadam is one of the most successful, wonderful centers in all of ISKCON, headed by His Holiness Shivaram Swami Maharaj. Amazing vision, amazing culture of Vaishnavism there. It's beautiful. Wonderful deities, wonderful cows, wonderful preaching, wonderful devotees, everything. So Tamal Krishna Goswami and I would dance together for hours and hours, every morning, every evening. And one day I was so much dancing with him. One day I picked up the mridanga to play. And he came up to me, he said, you're not going to play that, are you? I said, yes, I am. He took the mridanga out of my hands and took me by the hand, and he said, will you dance with me? So we danced. I can say I've never danced in kirtan with greater pleasure than dancing with Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. It was very special. In fact, yesterday in Calcutta, one of his disciples said he has a video of us dancing together. So, I know. And when he came to Mayapur, there was so much to be said. So many devotees were brought to this movement by him, directly by his amazing, powerful preaching. At a certain point, he was inspired to go to college, to establish Krishna consciousness in the academic circles. So he went to school. He was an undergraduate in a very prestigious temple in Texas. And nothing like this. He's in his 50s. And he's going to school with, people who are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And he's sitting in the classes with them. And he was the #1 student in the entire college. #1 student. Whatever he did, he just did it, like perfectly. #1 student in this time. He was an undergraduate. And the college gave him an office amongst all the other professors. Unheard of. Did you ever hear anything like this? Undergraduate, they gave him an office where all the other professors had their offices. Yeah, undergraduate in academic conferences with the highest PhDs of America in the world, and the National Council of professors of whatever it is, academia. They were calling him to read his papers. He graduated very quickly. Every year, the #1 student in the entire college. Now, usually when you're older, it's harder to learn. That's why people go to college when they're young. He got a scholarship to Cambridge University. Also, Prabhupada searched his heart, obviously, at seeing how to make the world Krishna conscious. The communist countries were the most dangerous and the most difficult. Krishna consciousness was expanding like anything in North America, South America, Australia, different parts of Africa, Europe, even parts of the Middle East. Prabhupada went to Tehran in Iran and preached there. But communism, that was very, very difficult. Prabhupada himself personally went to Russia to establish Krishna consciousness. There was one place left, China. Nothing there. Prabhupada sent Tamal Krishna Goswami to go to China to spread Krishna consciousness. And he did. He established a foundation and made it grow. Do you remember? A few weeks ago, about 20 devotees from China came here to Radha Gopinath temple. There was about 100 devotees from China in Mayapur not long back. There are thousands of people becoming Krishna consciousness in China. It's all underground. And most of the major preachers are the disciples of Tamal Krishna Goswami. This year in Mayapur during the GBC meetings, they showed the new books being published. There's 3 full-fledged books of Srila Prabhupada that have been translated and published by the BBT in large quantities in the Chinese language, done by the disciples of Tamal Krishna Goswami. And in his last days in Sri Mayapur, GBC meetings very, they're quite rigorous because discussing so many intense topics. It's a wonderful association of wonderful devotees, but it's very strenuous. 2 weeks of meetings, usually all day, every day, and then meetings after the meetings and meetings before the meetings. Well, every night he called anyone who wanted to come to his room for kirtan. And he established a tradition. There are devotees who to this day say they were the most intense, ecstatic, emotional kirtans they've ever experienced in their lives. He was inspiring them to come kirtan. And during those times, I was given the fortune of spending many hours just alone with him, discussing so many subjects of how to serve Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes we'd go to Ganga together in the afternoon to take bath. And then on this day, the disappearance day of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj and Rasikananda Prabhu, he unexpectedly, suddenly left us in Fuliagram, in the place of Haridas Thakur. Srila Prabhupada, whenever there was some urgent, important project, Srila Prabhupada would usually call Tamal Krishna Goswami. So wherever Prabhupada is, there must have been some important project, because he called Tamal Krishna Goswami back to his personal loving service. Yes, these great devotees very much magnify the qualities of Prahlad Maharaj that we find here in Srimad Bhagavatam. In regard to His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, I would like to repeat the last sentence of today's purport, which I feel very much give light to his life. Prabhupada says, Prahlad Maharaj provided a vivid example how to think of the spiritual master and accept his directions. Thank you very much.